Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Theatre Art Life one-on-one discussion today with the wonderful Sam Humphrey. Before we get started with introducing Sam, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping slides for those who have joined us many times before, and for those who haven't, you may be aware we have a few ground rules. On the right, there's a chat box if you've never used Webinar Jam, so you can say hi, tell us where you're from, and ask any questions that you'd like throughout the session of me and Sam. And if for any reason you drop out, log back in any time via the link. If you can't hear us, you can also try and log out and log back in. And a replay is going to be available and sent to you personally within 24 hours of this session if you are having some internet issues. So don't worry, you will not miss out. Now, Sam Humphrey is a Los Angeles-based Kiwi actor who was raised in Melbourne, Australia. Can't wait to talk about that. Born with a highly rare genetic condition, Sam may have faced more hardships than most, but it is those challenges that have fueled his relentless drive to become an actor. At only 127, 4'2" centimetres tall, he doesn't allow his rare condition, acrodyplasia, stand in the way of fulfilling his lifelong ambition of stardom. Sam's mission is to make a notable mark and create positive change in the film industry and a society on a global and international scale that will continue to impact individuals and society in a meaningful and positive way for generations to come, and to create a legacy that helps change the world and leave it a little cleaner, nicer, positive, and full of love. Sam, welcome to Theatre Art Life.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna. I am so honoured and humbled to be here, and I can't wait for us to get into some of these exciting questions that we have.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, just put a bit of context. You're now stuck in LA, as we just spoke about before we went on air, and bunkering down there at the moment.
Yes, I am. As everyone says, LA is the hotspot for COVID, and I'm right in the middle of it.
Hotspot for movies and COVID. Is there any movies getting made at the moment? Do you know?
So at the moment, things are obviously operating a little bit slower because of COVID. Especially on the live action front, a lot of things have slowed down. But there's a big upswing in animation and different projects like that. So I'm getting a lot of different voiceover auditions, and they've been going great.
That's amazing. I love how, there's a whole other industry. I've been learning about that in Los Angeles, that there's so much voiceover work that exists as well as, real life work. And that's, it's another aspect of acting that you forget about.
Totally. I mean, I actually didn't get involved in VO all that much until right before COVID, actually. I had just graduated from a course that I was doing in voice acting, which unfortunately COVID, kicked off at the start of 2020. But for me, it was kind of like perfect timing for me to get into voice acting with live action slowing down.
So let's talk about a little bit. I want to start with The Greatest Showman because I have to say I just love that movie. I love the way that it's shot. I love the premise. I love Hugh Jackman. But I also want to ask, because I also worked in the circus, and historically P.T. Barnum was not necessarily the Disney-like hero that he's portrayed in the film. So what was your, in the part of this creative process and the process of The Greatest Showman, what are your thoughts on the portrayal of P.T. Barnum and the story itself?
So, we definitely have to think about, what's an intriguing story, and how do we pull in, the audience and the crowd to want to see a good story and good film, and feel, a good, warm-hearted, feel-good film. And now, obviously, P.T. Barnum has had a very colourful life, and, it makes for an interesting story. But when you're watching something, that Hollywood puts on, of course, they're not going to necessarily stick to the full reality of it, because, it's not always going to be the most wonderful movie. But even going back to P.T. Barnum as who he was, and not being necessarily the most shining example of a role model that we can look up to, he's definitely still, the grandfather of the entertainment industry. If we look at the history of P.T. Barnum, and my character, there wouldn't really be, this glamorized vision of Hollywood and entertainment in the day that we see it today. Because he really made like entertainment colorful and different and unique. Because as you can see in the movie, with Philip Carlisle and all the sort of richer elite people, that they were more attracted to, classic and opera and plays, which was, still a great form of entertainment, but it was more for the upper class. And so the lower class couldn't really get into that degree of entertainment. So he's done a lot for the entertainment industry and where we are today. So, I mean, despite his, colorful aspects, he's definitely still one to be, looked up to for what he has done for this industry.
No, he was certainly a wonderful entrepreneur and definitely built the foundation of, of all of that kind of genre of entertainment within circus that, I think companies like Cirque du Soleil and, other companies have built upon. So it's such a great history. And it's fascinating because the character that you play, Tom Thumb, has his own amazing story. So I was looking this up before I was speaking to you, and like he literally became an actor and a comedian and a singer and a dancer, and he got married on top of a grand piano in New York, which I think is amazing. Wow. And
maybe I'll follow suit.
Exactly, you should do that too. And then even the fact that when PT got in financial trouble, Tom Thumb was what was his name, Charles Stratton, actually bailed him out of financial difficulty, and he toured through Europe, and he went to Bangladesh. And so how much research did you take on that character, Charles Stratton, and how much did you draw from your own experience to play the character of Tom Thumb in the film?
Great question. So in terms of like the research that I did on my character, at first I didn't do too much research because like I wanted to kind of get that from the feel of just being on set and like let it come naturally. And also I wanted to, hear what the director's vision of the character was, because, the director has a certain vision in his head, which may not always necessarily line up with the actual history. So there was that. But then as I did do a little bit of research when I was in New York filming, I realized that my life and his life were very identical in a way. He hid himself away from, he was hidden away from the world. And before he was given a chance to really, shine, it took P.T. Barnum to come to him and make him this international star. And so when I did that research, I could see that I had hidden my own true self away from the world as well. Like I had a lot of self-doubt in myself, and I didn't really know who I was or, what I was going to be to the world. And, that's what I think, not only as a actor, but also as a human being, you want to explore what's inside you and what makes you. And I think that's a lot of the same things that me and him both shared. And so I was able to tap into my own experiences in terms of going through my own challenges and, wanting to commit suicide and having depression and all those kind of internal things that I was hiding away from the world. And so that's how I think mine and his life kind of, go hand in hand.
It's amazing because I think, there's layers that I feel that you see in that character. You never know like an actor's journey to that role, but there is some definite layers, and I appreciate that you say that it really hit home with your personal experience, and we'll get to that, later. But you're also, I think the other thing that's quite interesting is that it's a circus environment, and it's P.T. Barnum and everything. So were you involved? I know you've done theatre and film, but you had been involved in the circus realm before you'd acted in this role?
No, actually, I have always thought about that because my stature and my size, and I obviously have a very unique look. And it's funny you mention that because after The Greatest Showman, well, while I was filming The Greatest Showman, I got to meet like a lot of the troupe acts that, you know, the extras and the troupe performers and all that. And actually, they had asked if I wanted to join them on a performance that they were actually putting together to tour the US. At that time, it was a very interesting notion, but I had a lot of other things on my plate at that time. So as much as I really would have loved to have been a part of that, I had to say no. But it definitely would have been an absolutely amazing experience, for sure.
I'm sure we could find a role for you in Cirque du Soleil or something like that, Sam, for sure. Ringmaster.
I'm sure we can find a role in Cirque du Soleil for me. I'm not that flexible, though.
Oh, that's great. And so going back to the challenges that you had, you know, I think that's quite interesting. Many actors have, it's a hard industry to break into it from the outset, you know, as an actor and as a performer. And you've got these extra challenges stacked on top of that. And you were growing up, just correct me if I'm wrong, like you were born in New Zealand. I'm not sure when you were growing up in Australia, but either way, both industries are quite small. So that's another, you know, to make it in New Zealand or Australia as an actor is another layer of difficulty. So what was your approach back then, and why acting, and how did you overcome those personal challenges to build the confidence? Because, you know, when you're acting, you're putting yourself out on the public stage. There's no hiding there, right?
No, there's absolutely no hiding. Anything you do in the public eye is going to be seen, and unfortunately, it's going to be judged whether or not you do well or not. There's always going to be, you know, people that want to lift you up, and there's always going to be people that want to tear you down. And that's something that you really have to mentally prepare for, especially when you put yourself in the spotlight. And I mean, putting yourself in the spotlight is one thing, but then putting yourself in the spotlight as a performer and an entertainer, where your sole purpose is to, you know, allow yourself to be seen and give like your creative talent to the world. That's very challenging. And like you said, I did grow up in New Zealand to about the age of 13, 14. And so that New Zealand is a very, very small country, and it was definitely a huge challenge to try and, you know, get roles there. So I was very fortunate that my parents decided in 2006 that we would move to Australia. So that opened up, you know, the acting world a little bit more than New Zealand. However, Australia, again, is not, you know, the entertainment capital of the world. So I did what I could in progressing, you know, at that time it was, you know, mainly a hobby. So from about the age of 8, which is when the passion of acting, you know, started in me, from that age to about maybe even after high school, it was still mostly a hobby. But I fully intended to become, you know, a professional actor and make it my career. But being in such a small country that didn't have, you know, such a big entertainment industry, it was difficult. And I always aspired to come to America. I just didn't quite know what that looked like or how I was going to achieve that. So that was always one thing that was in my mind. And as you grow up watching, you know, movies and films and television, you always see that America and Hollywood is the place to be if you want to pursue acting. And so that was always on, you know, at the front of my mind. Going back with, you know, the challenges that that I mentioned earlier, growing up with acrodyplasia was definitely something that a lot of people had focused on with, you know, me wanting to go into acting as well. They said that I was very unique and acting would be a place where I would, you know, thrive because of my uniqueness. But at the same time, I had a lot of those mental challenges in my head, wondering how could I make it in such a tough industry? And that was actually the reason I wanted to make it in such a huge and tough industry, was because for me, it was like saying, if I can make it in one of the toughest industries in the world, then, you know, what can't I do? And for me, that was a big thing to tell myself and be able to believe, because I had struggled with so much mental doubt and depression and wanting to, you know, commit suicide. And so yeah, being able to succeed in this industry was just like the thing that I could succeed at and would make it all worthwhile to me, I guess, and make me see myself in a new light. So yeah.
And was that the driver to get you out of being in that state where you were depressed and suicidal? Like, what was that helped you get through that? What was the ladder that you climbed to get away from that mental state?
So, yeah, I mean, so I'm a Christian myself, so my faith is a big part of who I am, and that really helped me to get through a lot of those challenges. Unfortunately, and I say this a lot, like, it's definitely important to rely on the people that you have around me for support. You know, have your family there to support, have your friends, and if you need professional help, then definitely seek professional help. Because I unfortunately did not do that. So I relied on myself for most of my challenges, and then like my faith was there as well. And one moment I'd actually like to touch on, which is a little bit heavy, is actually one of the moments that I did actually try to commit suicide. So I was actually in the bathtub one day, and the water was about medium level, and I was kind of just lying in there soaking. And I don't actually know why at this particular moment, I tried, but I think just all those thoughts and all those moments, being depressed and wanting to commit suicide, and a lot of the other things that, the doctors had told me, which we can touch on. I think in that moment, it all kind of just got to me, and I thought, well, I could end it, I could end it here. And then I don't have to, go on with all of that. So I had actually tried, I submerged myself for maybe 3, 4 to 5 seconds, and I was holding my breath, and then I did start to let the water, come in. But then at the moment where I, started to run out of breath, I actually came up out of the water. And whether or not it was a thing of I couldn't do it, or I didn't, at least at the time, what I was saying to myself, like, I didn't have the courage, which is kind of a stupid thing to say, to be honest. I didn't have the courage to go through with ending my life, which, I mean, I think back to it now and I'm like, wow, that was, I don't know what I was thinking, but, that's the mindset that you have in that moment. But I came out of the water and I just started thinking, about my family and about my friends and then even about my faith. And I just thought, what would I be doing to all the people that loved me and supported me through all of this? And they didn't know how much I was really struggling with it. They saw my friends and my family. My family saw a little bit of it because they, were at home and they could see the sadness. But my friends at school, they didn't see any of it. And just touching on the suicide attempts, my siblings actually didn't find out about any of the attempts and how bad I was, going through all this stuff till roughly maybe about 5 years ago. So they finally found out very recently, and they were very, very shocked. And, they're very, very happy that I didn't, end my life, because that would have been a huge emotional trauma for, anyone to have to deal with. And especially in not knowing that, I was struggling with all this. It would be a huge blow and shock to them. So, and I couldn't do that. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us, because it's really, especially at this time, a lot of people with the COVID year there's been a lot of people struggling, financially and from a mental health perspective. And there has been an increase in suicides over the past year because of this situation. I know this is a bit of a side skip, but I think it's important, seeing that you've been through it. What would you advise to somebody who's having been in that situation and that state of mind? What would you advise somebody who's feeling in that position, very desperate? What would you advise that they do?
Well, so I would definitely advise don't do what I did. So, I mean, please reach out to your family, to friends, anyone who's going to support you. And I know, like, I've been through it, so I know the mental toll that it takes on you. You might be thinking, like, no one cares. You might be thinking that you're not loved. You might be thinking, what do I have to offer the world? Because these are all the thoughts that I was thinking. I felt very small and very insignificant. I felt like no one really cared what I had to say or, what I was going through. It's the lies that we tell ourselves. It's the mindset that we put ourselves in. You are loved. Everyone cares about what you have to say. I care about what you have to say. I love you. So if you are going through any of that, please reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. DM me. I'm happy to talk you through it. But at the same time, I'm not a professional. I'm not a licensed psychiatrist or anything like that. So please, if you are struggling, do reach out to some professionals. But I am always here to help you or talk to you, whatever you're going through, I am available.
That's such a rock star response. Thank you, Sam. I just want to go back to you're in LA and you've been in Australia and New Zealand. I want to talk about a little bit of the work that you did in Australia soon. But what's the biggest differences now that you live in LA and you've done The Greatest Showman and you've been in Hollywood? What for those people in Australia who've never been to Hollywood or those people in Hollywood who've never been to Australia, tell us the differences between the industries in any kind of summary that you can make.
Sure. Well, for one thing, it's definitely Australia is very small and the US is very big. That's for one thing, in terms of the entertainment industry. I think Australia is definitely growing and expanding. Especially now, there's a lot more opportunities with the access to the internet and different, streaming platforms. It's not all having to be done here in Hollywood these days. And also, just going back to, even New Zealand, in this day and age, New Zealand is actually coming to the forefront of the entertainment industry. Just touching on COVID, they are actually one of the first countries that I know of to actually be completely clean. And they are taking, the lockdown bubble very seriously in terms of who they let in and the quarantine period and all those kinds of policies. So, and unfortunately, because of the last year with COVID, America has been struggling a lot with the entertainment industry. And so that is definitely the biggest challenge, that the US used to be the forefront of entertainment and Hollywood, but not so much now, which is kind of ironic because I am now here in LA.
In lockdown.
Trying to pursue my career. But now it's all headed back to my home country. So, who knows? I might just have to pop back home sooner than I had wanted to, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it more, the competition for roles? Obviously, when I think of Hollywood, I think the competition is fierce, right? But also, it's probably fierce in Australia and New Zealand as well because of the limited number of roles. So, how do you put yourself out there in LA at the moment? I mean, not say pre-COVID. How were you trying to get those roles? Were you going to auditions, trying to break into? What was that process?
Yeah. So, there's kind of the traditional way of going about getting an acting job. There's the self-tape, there's the auditions, and then, you have your agent, you have your manager, all that kind of stuff, and then you submit to casting directors. But then there's also the non-traditional way. If you, and being an actor and being an entertainer, it's all about being an entrepreneur as well. So you have to put yourself out there. Like, you can't necessarily rely on other people. And that's not to say not to rely on other people, because there's a lot of people that can, help you. And I think that's one thing that goes to that competitiveness in this industry, that unfortunately everyone is, out for themselves. So there's not very much help, because everyone is unfortunately looking out for themselves. And that is definitely a difference that I'll say from growing up in New Zealand, because New Zealand's very very homey and very small. So, you know, everyone kind of knows everyone, and, you know, we're all kind of friends. And a meeting in New Zealand versus a meeting in the US is very different. When you meet, so if you meet, say, a producer or a director or like anyone in this industry, it's very casual. It's more like sitting down and having a cup of coffee and just being like, hey, nice to meet you. Like, what are you working on? And like, you know, how can we collaborate? Yeah, it's very, you know, it's very structured. So like, you don't necessarily, it's not traditional for you to reach out to producers or reach out to, you know, directors and all those kinds of people. You go through your agent, you go through your manager, and you go down the line, and that's how you'll be connected. But lately, and with COVID, a lot of people have been trying to, you know, get away from the traditional, because the traditional is not working. So we're having to, you know, go on Zoom calls, and we're having to do like Zoom auditions and self-tapes. Self-tapes is a very big thing right now versus live auditions. And that's been a transition for a very, very long time in general with the acting industry. But so in terms of being an entrepreneur and being an actor and an entertainer, you need to create your own work, and that is something that I've been focusing on in the last year, and not even the last year. You know, I've always been working on stuff, and I'm always thinking of new ideas of how to get myself out there or what projects to create. And I'm very excited on what I've been working on in the past year, not just on an acting front, but on, you know, being a speaker and being a writer and being a producer as well. And so, yeah, I'm definitely working on a load of projects, which, you know, I'm looking forward to sharing about and looking forward to showing all of you throughout this year.
Well, we're looking forward to that. I watched the preview of Jeremy the Dud, the TV film. I haven't seen it yet. And the premise of the premise of that, for those who don't know what it is like a role reversal in terms of disability. So people who don't have a disability are seen as like the not normal ones, and then everybody that has a disability is the predominant. So tell us about that film, because I think that's a hilarious premise, and you were in it, and what was that show like? What was the film like, and how was that process, flipping disability on its head?
Yeah. So I mean, filming Jeremy the Dog, like it was so fun. It was just
it looked fun.
We all had a great time on set. We became very close. You know, myself and the main cast. So myself, Adam, Chloe. I am really, really sorry. I am actually blanking on the actor who played Jeremy the Dog, and I know he would probably shoot me because I don't believe I am forgetting his name. But now I'm remembering it, so he won't shoot me now. Nick. So we all became a very close family, the main cast and the director. And because we all, except for Nick, we all had disabilities on some level. And it was great to just be able to show that and show that we're like everyone else, you know. We should be included. And inclusivity is a big thing that, you know, I talk about, and it's a big thing that also my friend Chloe talks about. Me and her actually still very, very good friends today. And whenever I do pop back over to Australia, we catch up. And so one thing with Jeremy the Dud is that we were very passionate about it because, like you said, it does flip that stereotype of having a disability on its head. And we wanted to show the world that what it would look like if in a world full of people that were rare and special and different and unique, what that would look like with us running the world and the world being, you know, the world being ours, so to speak. And then showing what it looks like with, you know, a person who is different having to go out into the world and do everyday things. So this was like a short film / pilot. So we are actually trying to, get funding, and we are trying to expand on that at the moment. It's a very long process, as anyone who's in this industry knows. It can take a very long time for anything else around. So the message with that is that us living in a normal world, so to speak, is very difficult, and we go through a lot of challenges just to live ordinary lives, so to speak. So in that first episode or pilot, we were showing Jeremy going out and trying to get a job, and showing the stereotype of how people treat people who are different and unique in terms of, trying to get a job. So you see things in the short film. People call them names, and they, tell them they're stupid, and they ridicule them, and they say that you can't work here because, I'm not hiring judge. And that was, that's one of the lines that actually really sticks out to me. I'm not hiring judge. And it's like, well, what are you trying to say? Like, I mean, we all have different talents, and we all have different, aspects that we can lend to whatever it is that the project is. So I'm passionate about it, and I would love to, return to my role as Jai. Should we be able to obtain funding and be able to get it off ground?
I love it. I love the whole premise of it. And I think it's such a beautiful way of articulating the experience that you may have had by those offhanded comments that may not have come from bad intent or malintent, but mostly ignorance, right? And they have that. And when it's kind of thrown out from a disabled person to somebody who they, maybe classify as normal. I don't want to say that normal's a bad term, but somebody who is without any kind of disability, and how it's quite profoundly affecting is, when you see that, you're like, wow, that's the kind of stuff that you may hear on a day-to-day basis. And so I think it's a great premise for a TV show, and also even for the pure fact that we could get a whole lot of people of varied natures of disability and neurodiversity who could be in a TV show as a full-time role, and not just the token person. Like they're there as a predominant, and I love the idea of that. Right.
Actually, just touching back on it, it was kind of ironic or funny to me, actually, because when we were shooting this in Geelong in Australia, and I had actually been given accommodation in Geelong so I could be there the whole time. When I was arriving and being actually picked up by the director and walking to the hotel with him, one guy actually walking past me and the director turned, and he wasn't even really speaking to me, which I thought was kind of ironic and funny. I mean, most of the time I just disregard it now, because I'm like, in all fairness, like you said, it is coming from a place of ignorance, and they're not necessarily meaning to be offensive, or they're not meaning to insult you. They just don't know. And that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to raise awareness about, is that don't be ignorant. Like, don't say something just because, you can say it. Like, learn more about, how we feel, and, have a little bit more thought about it before you just say words. Words have power. So a gentleman was passing us, and actually looked at me, and then looked at our director and said, "Oh, look at you little buddy. Good for you, carrying your own luggage." And I'm like, me and the director just shared a look. We're just like, we just shook our heads, and we shared a look. We're like, yep. And wow. This is why we're making this project. It was like literally that moment was like, it said it all. It was like,
it was complete. It was complete validation right there.
It was, and I have no like hard feelings against anyone who escaped me as a kid. But I mean, it definitely irritates me a little bit. I mean, it definitely irritated me, in my high school years because I didn't want to be looked at as different. I didn't want to be looked at as a kid. And I got comments like, "Hey, little boy, where's your mummy?" Or, "Hey, little boy, are you lost?" And it just, when at that age, when I'm a teenager, and when you don't want to be treated like a little kid. You want your independence, and you want to be treated like an adult. And so that I would just avoid people. And I started, at the very start, I would give these very long-winded explanations about, I have acrodyplasia, I'm short-statured, I'm really, at the time, I'm really 15, and my bones don't grow, and blah, 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 so on and so on. And then it just clicked in my head one day. I was like, what am I doing? Because no one really is going to get this. I don't even understand it. So let alone are they going to understand it, nor are they necessarily going to care. Like when they walk away in 5 minutes, what kind of impact is that going to have on them? They're probably not even going to remember. So I just stopped explaining, and I just, gave him the duck and would go into the next aisle, or if I was out with my friends, they would then be my spokesperson, where they would start explaining, and then it just got to the point where they even gave up. So it was like, whatever, I am who I am, and, people just have to accept it. Accept it, or, go on with your own life, because I'm living my life, you live your own life.
That's it. And, I guess you've probably developed that fortitude over time. I think teenagers can be cruel at the best of times, right? So to be growing up in that situation, to having to defend yourself, it's like, oh my gosh. So there's been a lot of discussion throughout the pandemic while the industry's been shut down, because I think we have had time to sit and reflect, on what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. So there's been, lots of discussion about equity, diversity, opportunities for minorities, be that ethnicity, disability, neurodiversity. So what do you think is, because you're living this, so in your opinion, what's the pathway for the entertainment industry globally to mirror real society and all its diversity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I speak a lot about, diversity and equal opportunities and things like that. And when I speak on that, a lot of people, hear me speaking about, being rare, or, having a beauty mark, or being disabled. And a lot of people hear me, saying how the industry needs to be more inclusive of people with disabilities and things like that. Now, the industry is definitely expanding on that, especially in the last decade with diversity, inclusion. But I think it definitely goes far beyond just having, that one person of ethnicity in your project, or that one person who is quote unquote disabled in your project. Sometimes, and not to speak bad about the industry, but sometimes I feel like when it comes to casting, they're just trying to check off the boxes. And that's a good thing, and it can be a bad thing, because when you're just trying to check off a box, I've been thinking about it a lot, and sometimes it's a little bit hard for me to talk about, but it can affect how people feel about themselves, I think. Like if you believe you're just there to check off a box, and it's great to be there to, be in this project and all that kind of stuff, because I absolutely loved my role in The Greatest Showman. And I wouldn't change it for the world, because that was a phenomenal movie, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. But sometimes in projects, I feel like they're just trying to tick off those boxes, and that can be damaging to people's, mental health. Because I definitely, from time to time, I get jobs where they're just looking for a little person, and it's like, well, yeah, I'm a little person, and I definitely want to play up to that, because it's an acting role. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want that to be the deciding factor as to the roles that I play. So projects like Jeremy the Dad are important. And my friend my friend Chloe actually said it best. Inclusivity is not hard. Inclusivity basically means looking after your actors and making sure that they are okay when they are on set. So it's not hard to include people. It's not hard to be diverse and extend equal opportunities to everyone. And that's definitely somewhere where the entertainment industry is going and the world is going. But I think we definitely need to make some more important and bigger strides towards that.
Mm. And also, I think in my perspective, say you've got a cast of, romantic comedy or whatever, and you've got the main character and then you've got this sidekick, and it's not definitively decided in the script what that person looks like, but then you show up for the audition and it doesn't say the sidekick is a little person, it's just the sidekick is this character, and suddenly they see you and say, oh, that could be that character, it could be you, rather than, like you say, ticking the boxes. Just allowing people who have diversity and look or feel or whatever their disability to be perhaps those characters in a film that may not have been considered until that person rocks up for an audition, right?
Yeah, I mean, so for example, I just actually signed with an amazing talent agent this week, and they are a diversity agency. And so what they're trying to do, and I am extremely honored to be a part of their agency, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to move the focus off people with disabilities just playing those, lower roles and the smaller roles. Because, I mean, that's amazing to include people of diversity and people with disabilities in the project, but it's one thing to lift them up to a position of power. When you see people of diversity and of different ethnicities and, different disabilities playing doctors, lawyers, judges, people of power, power status, it then gives a different perspective on how they're viewed. Because, for example, if you look at myself, most people might think, oh, you're not really disabled, and I'm not. And that's that's one of the things that I'm trying to get across, not only in this industry, but to the world. I am a huge rare advocate, and I advocate on behalf of, not just the disabled community, but I advocate on behalf of diversity and equal opportunity for everyone. I want to leave that legacy behind, that everyone in the world, whether or not you're disabled, whether or not you're, of a different race, religion, any of that, you can be whatever you want to be, and you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to be restricted by labels. You don't have to be restricted by the world or society. And so that's one thing that I try to challenge, not only the film industry, but I also try to challenge society as a whole.
And what better platform than to put yourself out there as an actor, like you said, to put yourself in the public space, to forge that normality of that. I also wanted to say that I feel, we're going back to your ticking the boxes, that people of color have also expressed that same feeling in terms of getting a role in a company or in a show to tick that box. So it's not a unique experience there in terms of diversity, and so it's really important to like you said, elevate those people to positions of power so that becomes a norm. So what's your hopes for the industry moving forward then, out of COVID and beyond just casting people in bigger roles and having it more accepted? What else do you think that the industry should be doing?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I didn't quite hear that.
I said, what else should the industry be doing other than, we're coming out of COVID and we need to work on diversity and accessibility, etc. But what else would you like to see how else would you like to see the industry evolve out of COVID?
So I think, it's going to be very interesting to see where, how the industry recovers and how it comes out of COVID. I think with the industry, with the diversity aspect, like COVID has definitely risen diversity higher. But I think I think like in terms of like gender roles as well, and different people of the LGBT community as well, kind of including more of that, and like just uplifting more of that to the top in terms of like business, in terms of other industries, because not only is the entertainment industry battling these things, it's the whole world is battling it. And so I kind of want to see the entertainment industry being that forefront to show the rest of the world, because it's such a visual industry. Like everyone that sees film and television, that's where they get their perspective from. And so I think the entertainment industry has a very big responsibility to show the rest of the world how it should behave and how it should act. So I just want to see that happen, and see the industry take more responsibility for what it, shows the world. So that's what I'd like to see, yeah.
Do you have it, alternatively, on the flip side, do you have any concerns about the industry moving forward out of COVID? Do you fear that it might just go a little bit back to normal or prior to 2020 in the methodology, or do you think things have really shifted?
So, I mean, I think there's kind of two parts to that question. I think there'll be a little bit of normality restored here in the US, like with Hollywood. But again, I think the industry has definitely taken a major shift to how it's going to move forward. So we're definitely moved forward on this, technology platform, and not even just the entertainment industry. I think the whole world has shifted to more of a digital space. We can see a lot more businesses, going online and figuring out how to reach their audiences and reach their followers on a digital space. And I think that's going to be exactly the same for the entertainment industry. I mean, there will definitely be a lot of live productions coming back, but I think for a little while, animation is going to be pretty key to moving forward. And even, stop motion and motion capture and things like that. So, and even in terms of with actors, even actors being on set, I mean, there's going to be a lot of cautious, a lot of caution in terms of getting close to the other actors, and especially when we talk about those intimate scenes, because Hollywood definitely has a lot of those kind of scenes, and a lot of actors are definitely going to be a little bit more cautious in terms of getting too close to one another. And yeah, so there'll definitely be a lot of changes, but we will return to some normality, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. I hope so. And just tell me, are you open to theatre opportunities as well? Have you done much on stage work, whether that be New Zealand? I know you did that back in New Zealand and Australia, but tell us a bit about any theatre work that you've done.
Sure. So in my professional career, I haven't actually really done any theatre work. But in high school, I was a theatre major, you could say. So I did most of the theatre productions in high school. And actually, even touching back on high school, I never really auditioned for the theatre productions, because most of the auditions would happen, during free periods or lunchtime. And I didn't want to give up my free time at lunchtime to audition. And so a lot of the time I wouldn't audition, but I would be offered the roles because, my drama teachers knew that I was capable of doing these roles. So many times I was just given them. So I have done theatre productions like The Midsummer Night's Dream. I've done Alice in the Wonderland. And it's actually kind of ironic because in high school, the year before I was actually supposed to finish high school, we were going to put on a musical. And now many of my friends and my family know that I'm not that musically talented, which is very, very ironic, me being one of the biggest musical hits ever. And so I actually said no, I wouldn't do a musical. And that's always been actually one of my rules to say no to doing a musical, because to be honest, I can't sing, I can't act, I don't have rhythm, I don't have any of that. So, but when I auditioned for The Greatest Showman and I found out that it was a musical, you know, I wasn't going to pass up that opportunity. So my rule of not doing a musical went out the window.
Yeah. So, but suffice to say, we may not see you on Broadway anytime soon, right?
Probably not. If you do, it will be with a lot of training.
I love that you say you inadvertently ended up in the theatre in high school, because it's funny because you say you're a shy. I was also a very shy person, and I ended up doing theatre as well. It must be where we all gravitate towards when we've got nowhere else to go in the high school realm. You just go hang out with the theatre kids.
I was kind of the king of the theatre, club, drama, you know, thing. Everyone, because I was always a very natural actor, so everyone was like, wow! And they always, you know, liked to lift me higher than I was. So.
Yeah. Christine points out there are plays on Broadway also. So yes, I'm joking. They're not just musicals, and I do hope Broadway returns really soon as well. Hopefully those 41 theatres can be filled up soon.
There are a number of Broadway shows that I would like to see myself. I've seen a couple, but yeah, now that they're shut down, it's a little bit of a loss. It's a loss to all of us. Absolutely,
absolutely. Sam, I really want to thank you for spending an hour with us here on Theatre Art Life. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you more personally. And oh my gosh, I wish you safety over there in Los Angeles amidst the COVID, and the best for your career ahead, and much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a huge honor, and I am humbled to, you know, be able to be on your show and talk about, you know, my journey and what it means to be an actor here in Hollywood, especially in COVID times. It's definitely very challenging during COVID times, but we will all prevail.
Absolutely, absolutely. Guys who are watching, before we go, I just want to show you that tomorrow we have another webinar, a brief history on the history of makeup and hair, run by the wonderful Megan Mason, who is going to take us through that. And she's going to begin a series on this so we can look into how all of those things evolved in the entertainment industry, and how you can learn from that. Also, if you would like to, we do these on a voluntary basis, most of these webinars. So if you would like to donate to Theatre Art Life, we're quite happy to take a small donation. So I'm just going to put a link in there for you. And there's also the link to register for that webinar tomorrow as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, those who are watching and those who will be watching around the world, the replay, as all of the people watch here on different time zones, Sam. So some of them watch now and some of them watch later. Thanks again, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And I look forward to seeing your work in the future.
For sure. And again, thanks for having me. And thank you to all of you amazing people at home or wherever you are in the world for tuning in. And thank you for watching us later, if you're going to watch it later. I look forward to sharing everything I'm doing. And if you would like to find out more about me, you can check out my social. And I will be releasing 2 books about my journey as an actor and as a rare advocate and all the challenges I've gone through. So definitely stay tuned and look out for that.
I'm looking forward to all those projects. Thank you, Sam. I'm signing off now, guys, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.